this decade. But it's not always been that way. Reporter Charles Hadlock tells us about Indianola, what used to be a major coastal Texas city until nature stepped in.
Of all the beaches on the Texas coast, this has to be the saddest one of all. This could have been the spot of one of the state's greatest cities, perhaps even larger than Houston. There's nobody here now, except for a few fishing camps and people in beach houses. And even they leave when the hurricanes come. The French explorer La Salle first discovered this place by mistake in 1685. He was looking for the Mississippi River, but he found Matagorda Bay instead. A crew member's journal described the area as alive with bison, fish, and fowl. But most of the crew hated the flat, barren marsh and desert, and many of them returned to France. La Salle ordered the 180 men and women who stayed to establish a colony. But their last supply ship, the Belle, sank just offshore.
7 centimeters aft of the forward edge here.
It was only recently discovered by archaeologists, providing us a glimpse of the long, sad history of Matagorda Bay. La Salle was later murdered by his own men. For 3 long years, the colonists stared at that open water and waited for help from France. But Louis XIV refused to send another ship. Many of the colonists died of disease. Others were killed by snakes and Indians. In the 1840s, the Germans arrived and soon built a prosperous city. It became known as Indianola. By all accounts, it was a grand city with a promising future. The technique of packing beef in tin cans was invented here, and it had one of the few refrigerated warehouses anywhere. It also had the finest harbor on the coast. Steamships and stage lines and railroads all came to Indianola, and so did a new generation of Americans. If your ancestors came from Germany or Poland or Czechoslovakia, and they settled in places like Fredericksburg or New Braunfels, chances are they came through here on their way to a new life in the United States. During the Civil War, Union troops occupied Indianola and controlled the port, but the city continued to grow. By 1875, 6,000 people lived here. Many of the new European immigrants had never seen a hurricane before. They didn't know quite what to expect when a telegraph said a hurricane was approaching Matagorda Bay. They soon found out. The eye of the fierce storm passed right over them. In just a few hours, most of Indianola was destroyed by wind and storm surge. The Galveston News said at the time, the destruction of Indianola is almost complete. The people are suffering for food and clothing, and the beach for 20 miles is strewn with dead bodies. To this day, nobody knows for sure exactly how many people died. Many of the markers at the cemetery share the same date, September 16, 1875. Those who survived thought Indianola was too prosperous, too vital to quit because of one freak tragedy. They stayed and rebuilt the town. Their gravestones tell what happened to them. An even more powerful storm hit Indianola again 11 years later on August 20th, 1886. Indianola was gone. Even the wreckage was scarce. Today, they put up a statue of La Salle to honor his discovery of this place. He can see all of Matagorda Bay from up there, the first eyewitness of the next hurricane.
That's amazing. But wasn't Indianola the county seat before those hurricanes?
That's right, Neil, it was. Indianola, as you know, was a major city in its day. It had 6,000 people living there, and it was the county seat of Calhoun County. But after the storm, the county leaders, those who were still alive, said, let's move it to Port Lavaca. But the newspapers at the time all said there really wasn't much left to move.
Now, what happened to this area during Carla in 1961?
Well, in 1886, after the last storm, there was some reconstruction at Indianola. They built the subdivision there, a few houses and fishing camps. But in 1961, Hurricane Carla wiped it all out again.
Thank you, Charlie, for that excellent report, and we'll be right back.